Welcome to Open Applied Linguistics Reading Club Media Author Series. Today we are so honored to be joined by Dr. Professor Benjamin Luke Moorhouse from City University of Hong Kong to talk about study quality in the age of AI. This is based on a paper published on TESOL Quarterly. Professor Benjamin Luke Moorhouse is an associate professor in the Department of English, City University of Hong Kong, China. He has extensive experience as a primary school English language teacher. He has worked for the Education Bureau, Hong Kong Baptist University, and the University of Hong Kong. He has received several teaching awards, including the President's Award for Outstanding Performance in Individual Teaching from HKPU in 2023. His research focuses on the lived experiences, competences, and professional learning of language teachers and teacher educators. Currently, he is exploring the impact of GenAI on language teaching and learning. He has published widely in international journals, including TESOL Quarterly, System RELC Journal, and ELT Journal. According to Stanford University, Benjamin has been in the top 2% of cited scholars worldwide from 2022 to 2025. Welcome, Benjamin. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks so much for the introduction.
Yeah, so today we will be discussing the article that's published earlier this year, well, in July, on TESOL Quarterly. So to remind everyone what this is about, I will ask a few guiding questions, and people who are attending live may ask additional questions. Okay, so my first question for you, Ben, is many TESOL researchers already use GenAI in small or large ways. And for your perspective, what was the biggest gap or confusion in the field that made you feel that a disciplinary framework like the one you propose was urgently needed?
That's a fantastic question. I'm glad you sent it to me before today's event because I had to think a bit about that one. I think it came out from my own explorations of AI, my PhD students' explorations of AI, and also when I started to see AI kind of creeping into different aspects of our kind of research and publication work, and I noticed that we were really struggling to know what we consider to be appropriate or not appropriate use. So the institutions of themselves were struggling, universities were struggling to kind of come up with what that means, and we're still kind of struggling to know what that means, what kinds of uses are okay, what kinds of uses are not okay. And at the same time, we were starting to see this kind of heavy marketing of AI tools towards researchers and the embedding of like AI features into many of the tools that we kind of intuitively go to or use within our research. So I was thinking, well, this is actually the technology advancements, the incentive to use these tools is outpacing any of our kind of methodological discussions about what we consider to be okay and what we consider not to be okay, and providing some kind of way for colleagues to kind of slow down and reflect on their uses and think about that. So that was kind of the catalyst. And I was working with I've worked with Marie, who's one of the co-authors. She's an editor of RELC Journal in Singapore, and I've worked with her for a while. And she was saying the same kinds of challenges that there's as editors, they're also struggling to understand how do they guide reviewers to look at these things? How do they understand people's use of AI in the work they're submitting? So it was kind of like all these things coming together and trying to figure this out. And we thought, well, maybe a framework is the way to go. And then because Luke Plonsky already had a framework, which is pretty good already, we thought. So when we found that one, we thought, oh, this is great. Let's see how we can modify this for this new reality. So that's kind of what was the kind of catalyst. the other thing was the fact that we've kind of been seeing most of the discussions around use of AI in both our teaching work and also our research work is around efficiency, like doing the same amount of work for less amount of time.
Sorry, but I'm not gonna put.
Oh, sorry. So we wanted to kind of also try to challenge this narrative a bit around efficiency, because as we know, research is not about efficiency necessarily, and it's more about quality and contribution to knowledge. So we wanted to also kind of raise the attention of this kind of narrative that's feeding into our practices, so we can kind of think differently about the use of AI in our research, not just as a time saver, but as a way of improving quality. And if it doesn't improve quality, then perhaps we shouldn't be using it.
Yeah, that's a interesting behind the scenes story that thank you for sharing about how this was developed. Yeah, I personally also noticed, I read the article by Luke Flosky on study quality as well. And when your article came out, and I was like, oh yeah, we should have that one, the one on AI as well. And I think it's really timely and useful, and you provided example in the article about how to use the framework to analyze and study. So I think it will, well, yeah, we need this article really at this time.
Oh, thank you.
And
Yeah.
another interesting I noticed is that because you build on you sort of build on the Plonsky's four-dimensional framework of study quality, and your framework is five, adding a human accountability element to the original framework. And I think it's a really innovative attempt to introduce human accountability as a new and separate dimension to study quality. But I wonder, in your view, what makes human accountability conceptually distinct enough from ethics and methodological rigor to justify to being its own category?
That's a fantastic point. And when I thought about it, I mean, they're obviously interrelated, right? They're interrelated
Yes.
ideas. I mean, again, it was about highlighting the role of the researcher. This is one of the primary reasons we wanted to have the human accountability there. If we take the efficiency argument that's being kind of pushed by the companies developing these tools, then to be efficient means that we have to pass over some of our responsibility to the tools. We have to automate things that we were doing before, and we knew what we were doing when we were doing them. We have to allow the machine to take over those parts of that job. When we do that, we may be losing some of our accountability without our awareness, because we don't necessarily know what they did. We don't know what they came up with, but we save time. So when we think about that, that's when the human accountability becomes important, because it starts to make us say, well, efficiency isn't enough. Then we have to, because if we just outsource our task to the machine, then we can no longer be accountable for what it does, because we don't know what it did. So this is partly to kind of keep that kind of argument going about that. Like, so for us, if we want to use AI as a part of a process, we have to be doing it as part of a process where it's involved in what we're doing, and we're looking at every aspect of that, and we can verify how we use it and the way we use it that way and why we use it that way. So that's where the human accountability comes in. Also, it's because we've started to see a few very cases where the authors haven't felt they needed to be accountable. So there was one book that was written. There was a machine review where they used ChatGPT to conduct a review, and within that book, they mentioned that they weren't accountable for the accuracy of the book because they used ChatGPT to do it. So they were kind of taking away their responsibility as researchers as to to create this book faster, and they felt they could justify taking away that responsibility because they used AI to do it. And we're also seeing that in other domains as well. You go to many different websites now. When you see AI generated content, there'll be disclaimers saying this may be generated by AI. Inaccuracies may appear again and again and again. And this is kind of like the companies, the people saying, well, don't trust me anymore because I used AI to do it. I'm not accountable anymore for the content that's being presented to you because I didn't do it. And that's a slippery slope, I think, that we can slowly kind of, without realizing it, suddenly this becomes a new norm, that it's okay to say that AI did it, therefore I'm not responsible. And we've got to be very conscious that we don't do that within our field, right? Because this can erode the trust, not just trust of the individual researcher, but the trust to the entire academic profession. If people start to say, well, I can't trust what I read because the person who does it, they themselves don't know what they wrote, or they themselves don't don't feel that they are accountable for what they've produced. The other thing is that as we automate more and more of the processes, it becomes less, say, traceable or trackable. So when the human knows they're accountable, they have to be able to kind of detail that process in a way that others can know what they did. So they have to know enough about how the machines work for them to be able to accurately articulate what they went through to get where they got. So it can't be like, I asked ChatGPT to do my coding. These are the codes I got. These are my findings, because they can't articulate the process. They have to understand how ChatGPT did it. They have to understand how they worked with ChatGPT. They have to know those things so they can then say these. I myself trust what I wrote and what I found. Yeah, so that's why we wanted that kind of additional one there, to make sure that we keep that in people's minds, that this is their responsibility, that they can't use these tools unless they can take accountability for the use of these tools.
Yeah, I think it's great that to have it, and I totally agree with you. Sometimes you see people saying that this is generated by AI, but they didn't quite mention how they work with AI to create those. And you also touch upon how we must know enough about how AI works in order to be accountable. So a follow-up question to that will be, in your paper, you did said that accountability is predicted on competence, meaning that ability or knowing what to do or how to do it. And how should, because you use the word accountability rather than competence in the framework. So how should TESOL researchers understand the relationship between accountability and competence?
Well, accountability is a set thing that we must have, whereas competence is a scale. So you can competently use AI to do, for example, in the example that I give in the paper is a paper, the one that we looked at, which is a paper and system that we used AI as part of the methods, almost as a way to kind of show how we might be able to do it in an appropriate way. What we were showing there is that yes, we can use AI as kind of like a cross-checker, or as like an additional step to see if there's anything there that we missed. And then we can go back to the data and look at that data again and see, what did it find that we didn't find? Did it find something that is truly there, or did it not? Did it hallucinate? Those kind of things. So when we have to do that, you actually don't need a lot of knowledge. You don't need a lot of competence around AI to use it that way, because it's human-led, right? You've already done the thematic analysis. You've already kind of come up with your themes. You've already ensured that you feel comfortable with what you've found in your data. And you're just using it as kind of another way to just look at that data again in a different way, which might be different from the way that you would have looked at that data, because maybe you're embedded in the data. You don't critique your own process as much as you could. And then you ask an AI, a large language model, to say, this is my data, this is my research question. What can you find in this data for me? And it might find some things that you didn't find, and you can go back. You don't need much competence for that. You don't need to necessarily know how they work, because you're not passing over the job to the machine. You're just asking the machine to give you a little bit of inspiration or ideas, right? So, but then if you were to say, okay, now I'm going to pass over the entire coding to the machine, I'm going to develop this kind of coding scheme, and I'm going to say to this, I'm going to train this chatbot to go through my data. Maybe I've got a very large data set, 200, 300 interviews or something, and I'm just going to train it, and then I'm going to let it go. You need a lot more competence to do that. You have to know which models to choose, right? You have to be very careful about which models you're choosing. You have to know how to system prompt those tools in ways to ensure that they don't kind of draw on their training data when they're kind of given responses, that they don't make that you reduce any chance that they have inaccuracies. You have to be able to tweak the prompts to increase the accuracy of the prompts. You have to be able to kind of do it multiple times, maybe, to see if it's coming up with the same responses each time, to increase the kind of rigor of that. So that requires a different level of competence. So I think the idea is that the accountability, the accountability is still the same, but one of them needs less competence than the other. So for me, I wouldn't feel necessarily competent to leave the AI to do the coding by myself. I don't know if I know enough about the AI tools themselves to say, okay, I'm going to give this job to you, but I'm still going to be accountable for what you did, because I trust that I've worked with you appropriately. But I do feel confident to say, here's my data, I've already looked at it. Can you find anything different? Because the risk is lower. I can just, if it doesn't come up with anything useful, I can just ignore it. If it does come up with something useful, I can go back to my data again and have a look. So the competencies are different. So I think the key thing is that you need to look at what you're wanting the AI to do and say, am I capable to do that? Can I oversee this? Do I have the knowledge I need to oversee this process if I ask it to do it in this way? So I think that's where they're different. So that's why the competencies can vary depending on what you're wanting to do with the AI. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for describing different research scenarios of how we might be using AI. And I also know that you do lots of different kinds of research. You do intervention studies with teachers. You do qualitative, more of like case studies, doing thematic analysis, etc. So I wonder, at the end of the paper, when you said you invite the community, the field of applied linguistics to adapt your framework, are there any specific types of research in TESOL? For example, experimental design or research with young learners that you think will require especially significant adaptation or modification to your framework?
Yeah, I mean, I think we put in this because we didn't, that even the three of us, even though we have experience doing research, we can't say that we speak for the whole TESOL research community. We don't know enough about everybody's research endeavors, or even the way that they understand research. So we wanted to ensure that we don't want to see this as kind of like preaching or the kind of, this is the guidelines now that are set down on us. I want it to be like a working document that different researchers can adopt that aligned with what that works for them. So, for example, I know very little about corpus studies and things like this. I know there's a lot of work within corpus in relation to use of AI. So I don't want to think that this framework would work for corpus scholars, for example, until they tell me it does, or they modify it in a way that makes sense for them. So I want to leave that space for different research communities within TESOL, which is a very large field, to kind of make space for them and think about what works for them. Equally, you're right. I mean, what you said about young learners, then there might be things there that we need to think about, which are maybe more, we need to have more kind of like even more cautious approach, right, to use of these tools with vulnerable groups. and how we understand vulnerable group data, and even how we kind of articulate to them in our research processes how we might be thinking about using AI as part of the research, right? If you were to put into a consent letter, I'm going to analyze your data using AI. As a PhD student, you may understand what that means and be comfortable with that. Whereas, a child may not be able to understand that at all. So that might mean that we can't use AI with that group for that purpose because they just couldn't understand what that means. So those are things that might be there as well. I mean, and there's also these kind of newer tools that are emerging now that we didn't necessarily think about when we did our framework. The things like it's happening so fast. Things like AI interviewers. So you can get avatars now that can do interviews for you. Things like that. They create additional ethical challenges and also accountability challenges, because if they're working on a vulnerable topic or something like that and they ask a question that affect the other person responds negatively to, but there's no human there to be aware of that, this could create additional challenges as well. So new kinds of methodologies, new kinds of AI may mean that the framework needs to be adjusted. Yeah, for these things. And there's also some research traditions. I mean, you probably saw recently, like a group of qualitative researchers published a piece about the AI shouldn't be involved at all in qualitative thematic analysis, reflective thematic analysis. So there will be these groups as well that perhaps want to modify this framework even more to the point where it fits better with their epistemology, their understanding of knowledge, their understanding of process and things like that. So they might adopt some of the parts, but they may reject some of the other parts because it just doesn't align with their research traditions or the way that they understand knowledge or the process, things like that.
Yeah, sure. I think many subfields in TESOL are in the process of trying to figure out how to work with or live with AI. I just attended a corpus linguistics special interest group event at Ball here in the UK, and the thing was about AI, and people discuss all sorts of things like, so if we generate a text through AI, should we tell students this is generated by AI or all sorts of things? So I think lots of fields are trying to ease ourselves into the era that AI will be somehow here and there during our research process.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting thing about should we tell our students that we use AI to do it, because that's another kind of discourse that's coming into our discussions around these things, where deception sometimes is worth more than honesty, right? Like if I declare that I use these tools in my research, or if I declare I use these tools in my teaching, I'm going to be judged negatively by my students, by editors, by the peer reviewers, but even by eventual readers. So I might find utility in these tools. They might be helping me to do something like improve my ability to communicate effectively through academic means, whatever. But then I won't want to tell people that because I'm worried I might get judged. So this creates another kind of real challenge, doesn't it? In all these domains, this somewhat being deceptive is worth more. It seems to be preferred than transparency. So this is something we've got to be. This is something that I'm also trying to address, and that's why I try to always include these declarations when I write articles, when I try to mention it in my method section, different examples of how I might use it, so we can kind of normalize some uses of AI so people feel more comfortable to say, well, Ben did it, therefore I can say I did it too. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I have one last question, and people can now take the time to think about their own question. And the last question is really, really broad, intentionally. So looking ahead, what impact do you hope this framework will have on the future of TESOL research practice? Any aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it gives people something to refer to. So when they're thinking about using of AI, they now have something they can look at and think about, how might I use AI? Do I have the knowledge I need? Those kind of critical, reflective questions that we need to be going to when we're kind of going through that research process, which can be quite, it can be exhausting, cognitively exhausting, doing kind of research, right? Thinking of good ideas, finding the literature, interrogating the literature, thinking about methodologies, coming up with search questions. It's cognitively really, really demanding, right? So it's very easy to think, oh, let me think about using tools to help me to do that. So hopefully it helps people to think about those kind of questions as they go through. Say, okay, I am using tools here. Why am I doing this? Is this the best way? What do I need to do if I use them in this way? Am I jeopardizing the quality of my study if I use them in this way? Am I enhancing my study if I use them in these ways? So they can kind of keep asking you these kind of, if questions. If I do this, what happens to this? If I do this, or I make this choice, this decision. So hopefully it guides people's decision making a bit more clearly. And it has for me, I think, as well. And the other thing is I hope it helps us maintain some ownership, because I'm really concerned that, the field is being kind of led by big tech. They're the ones with the money. They're the ones who can create advertisements directly targeting us. They're the ones that are kind of pushing, they're making all the other kind of companies all the other digital tool companies very concerned they're going to lose market share. ChatGPT comes up with deep research. Google Scholar's got its Scholar Labs. Scopus AI's got its Scopus has got its AI tool, and then they start to see it embedded in everywhere else as well. So they're kind of pushing it. They're trying to push us to adopt them as quick as possible. So we become dependent on them in some ways, and we don't know how to do things without them. And then that just normalizes them. That you eventually you'll submit a paper to a journal, and the expectation is you did use AI, and they say, how come we didn't use AI? Right? Because that's the best result for them, because that means it's embedded in everything, and then we're using their products for everything. So I want us to make sure that we keep some of the ownership of that. That we if we don't think this is a good use, that we maintain that. If we do think it's a good use, then we use it that way, but we don't just say, okay, whatever the tech company says, we will go. So that's the other kind of thing. So one is this idea that gives the individual researcher a tool to use to help them reflect on the use of AI. And the second is that it gives us as a field something to guide us as we kind of being bombarded with the utility of these tools. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ben,
pleasure.
for answering all these questions. This session and this recording will definitely be a great supplement to your article. When you read the article and then you watch this, and you have a better understanding, really. So people who join us, do you have any questions about the article, about AI use?
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Freddie. Hi.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And hi, Professor. I just have a very superficial question about the AI using in the study or the assignment. Um, will the acknowledgement of using AI will influence the marking results of the assignment negatively? I just want to know.
I mean, I think that depends a little bit about the context that you're doing it in, right? So for me, in my courses, so this is less to do with my research, more to do with my teaching, but in my courses, I do allow specific focus uses of AI within my assignments that don't prevent my students from demonstrating their the kind of competencies they need to demonstrate in that assignment. So if they declare their use of AI and they align with the uses that I permit, then that's great. If they declare use of AI that are not ones that I say are okay for that assignment, then that will probably lead to me talking to them about that, because it means that I can't necessarily know what they did or can do, because at the end of the day, we need to be able to see what they can do. So I think in our teaching, that's probably something we think about more. In research, I think that again, it all depends on whether the AI use is perceived by the editors and the reviewers as enhancing the quality. And you can verify the process clearly to them, how you used it. I recently reviewed a paper and they talked about use of AI in the methods section, which was like, yeah, great, someone's doing it. But they did it very short. They just mentioned the tool they used and that they asked this tool to kind of find some themes in the data, and they didn't really go into details about what that meant or how they ensured that they were the ones to oversee that process. So that wasn't enough information for me. So then I kind of asked, so as a reviewer, I said, if I don't have any objection to using AI as part of your process at all, but you need to tell me what you did and you need to demonstrate what you did, because we have to trust your findings. If not, they're no valuable to anybody. If the reader doesn't trust your findings, they're not of value. So you have to be able to declare that. So yeah, that's that. So in research, I would say it shouldn't be the declaration that's the problem. It's more that you give enough information to someone to make a good judgment about what you did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Professor. And
Yeah.
I had another question based on this one. And I want to know, is there any research or study about people's attitude towards using AI in their research or the study like that, or always already exist or something like that?
Yeah, my PhD student Carl Wu and I just published a paper in Journal of English for Academic Purposes, which looks at PhD students' uses of AI, what they consider to be appropriate and inappropriate uses of AI in different social science in different disciplines across the university. So you could check that paper out. But there's definitely, if you're looking to do a study, then there's definitely loads of space to look at other aspects as well. Particularly, there's particularly space to look at how PhDs, how people are, actually some ethnographic studies or diary studies where you might get a PhD student or others to kind of collect data of their use of AI over a period of time, maybe from the beginning to the end of a research process, where they document how they're using AI. Things like that would be currently not we don't have any studies like that. That kind of study would be really valuable, because the moment they're nearly all self-reporting, survey or interview style studies.
Yeah, yes, thank you. And I have another question. Okay, and I have noticed and look at your article, and your article have said about the mechanism for LLMs. They use the statistical probability to generate response. So in this case, it is impossible, or it is so difficult for the following researchers to see the article to replicate the result from the generative AI. So for human accountability part, is it necessary for the researcher to provide their prompts communicating with the AI to the platform or attached to their article?
I guess that's an aspect of transparency and detailing your process. Yeah, so that if you can show your prompts that you use, yes, it may not be fully replicable because you need to know apps, you need to do so many things, and because these tools are constantly being updated as well. Just because you use even the same model, if you use it 2 months later, the data it's drawn can be different, or those things can affect it. But it gives that transparency. It means that we can kind of at least look at their process and say, okay, this seems rigorous enough. They've involved enough humans in the process. They've used AI as a secondary tool to support them. They've done these things. They showed us how they used AI. Then we can say, okay, this is rigorous enough for me to say that this is an okay use. But if they don't include their prompts and they just say I did this and this with an AI, then they won't be giving enough that we can trust them, right?
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, Freddie. I think the second question was from Brian, and then I also saw a show of hands, but let's go to Brian first. Brian says, I am confused about AI assisted writing and human AI collaborative writing. Is it the same?
I mean, I don't really write too much about those ideas, but AI collaborative writing, I guess if we take the concept of collaboration, then you're co-constructing something together, right? So that would be a collaborative process. But then again, you've got to be conscious again about what that does that mean? Like, what role does the AI play? What role do you play? And are you giving some accountability to the AI tool? So I don't think there can be true collaboration in the kind of human sense where you have co-ownership, because usually collaboration also means you have co-ownership. So if I work with you on a publication, we co-construct the text together, we collaborate on the text together, we both have some ownership over that text, right? But it can't take away what your contribution, my contribution was, if it's like true collaboration. But with an AI tool, theoretically, you should always be the one in the kind of driving seat. It should be assisting you. So in the literature, we do see things like collaboration and things like this, but you have to just consider whether that aligns with your kind of understanding of accountability, ownership, and who can be a true collaborator. Yeah, that would be my kind of question for that. Yeah. So for me, I would always say everything is AI assistive at the moment because they can't truly collaborate, right?
Thank you for your answer, Ben.
You're welcome.
I also saw a show of hand from Mohammed. Mohammed, was that a question? Yes, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Benjamin. My question is, currently I'm doing a scoping review. My research area is AI ethics in language education, TESOL. So I'm trying to through my scoping study, I am trying to identify all ethical concerns regarding TESOL and develop a framework, comprehensive framework, specifically for TESOL. And so do you have any suggestion for me in terms of theoretical framework, anything I can use for this study?
For ethics of AI?
Yeah, ethics, ethical concerns.
I mean, there's quite a lot of people who are doing work on ethics of AI, like Peter DaCosta, who has some work on ethics and questionable research practices. There was a special issue in Research Methods of Applied Linguistics last year, I think, that looked at ethics in relation to applied linguistics. So I think that'd be a good starting point for you to explore. I mean, the Plonsky paper that we referenced and built on, I think also has some good aspects around ethics, because it kind of takes a broader view, not just about ethical research process, but also about contribution to knowledge, as in the societal value of our research in these applied fields, where perhaps it's not just about being ethical in the sense that we have to make sure that we don't do any harm to our participants, but also that we contribute something through our research to practice. There's also a kind of an ethical aspect too. So you could look at Luke Plonsky's work as well.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
What about this Luciana Floridi's theoretical framework. What do you think about that?
Which one, sorry?
Luciana Floridi.
I'm not familiar with that one. I'd have to look it up.
Okay. This is they have 5 principles with 5 principles.
Okay.
They have. Okay, no issue. Thank you so much for this.
No worries. Good luck with that.
Thank you, Mohammed. We have another question for Andrew. Greetings from Morocco, and thank you for your great talk, dear professor. Don't you think that the use of AI may lead to methodology over-reliance? Many researchers could outsource all the tasks, including data coding analysis, to AI tools.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern, right? The kind of publish or perish or no graduation without publication kind of requirements kind of pushes people to say, well, I need to get this out. And then they just kind of ask an AI agent to kind of simulate a process for them. Maybe they collect some data, but everything else is done by the AI. Yeah, this is a big risk, and some of the companies are already kind of promoting this reality too. You've got tools like Elicit, right, which is a AI literature review tool that if you pay enough money, it will generate the full report for you. It will find all the literature or do that. But then we're not, we're just bombarding journals, bombarding the field with work that has no real value, right? And then it means that other people have to do the work of like sieving and finding the valuable work. Journal editors, they have to spend more time thinking, does this really have any contribution or not? Out of a sea of more and more content. So, there is this huge risk, and we do need to kind of think about that, that if that truly does happen, that people start to do that, they start to just create things, automate the whole processes, and submit those things as academic contribution. And then at some point, a human does have to get involved, whether that's an editor or a reviewer or somebody else, and they have to deal with all of that stuff. So I think hopefully that knowledge and that understanding will stop that kind of thing from happening, right? So we can kind of get back to that understanding that we need to be contributing something of value, because now creating something with no value is too easy. But then it becomes harder to find the things of value because there's so much of unvalue that people have to get through to find it. So I think that's a real challenge at the moment. Yeah, so and that's why I want us to keep control of the agenda. That's why I don't want the tech companies to come up with it, because for them it's like, well, we've got a problem. People need to publish. Okay, let's help them publish. Let's just give them an automated process so it's easier for them to do that. They'll think of that solution to that problem, whereas we think more broadly of the social implications of this, the long-term implications of this. Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, we have 2 more questions, but we are short of time, but maybe Ben can answer it quickly.
Sure.
So the first one from Masood, given that Pascal is a low resource language, how can GenAI be used responsibly to support this language in teaching and research without reinforcing data bias or linguistic marginalization?
It probably can't. I mean, that's probably the answer. Until people who speak that language, which I guess you do, the person who asked it can really check it and make sure that it does that, then they can't. I mean, there are some, there's a paper by Sung-Yong Lee and Jim McKinley that looked at how they can train AI models to be more World English aware. And things like this, but this is still Englishes, right? Different kinds of varieties of English, but minority languages, where the databases are not the amount of data they have to draw on is very, very small, and usually narrow in the field and genre. It's going to be more challenging in those areas to say you can use it in those ways. So until you can, you probably can't. You need to test it and see how well they perform, test different models and see how well they perform before you use it.
Thank you, Ben,
You're
for the
welcome.
answer. And the final question from Emily. Emily said, "Hi, Professor. In your paper, you said one way to add societal value is to capitalize on GenAI tools to increase access to knowledge for the public and non-academic audiences. Is there other ways to add societal value, as AI already has the possibility to present falsehoods? Can we say it is already one way to not adding societal value, right?
Right.
It is already changing people's mindset towards accessing knowledge."
You're right. I mean, I think truly at this point, the damage of AI has been greater than the benefits. I don't think that this generative AI hasn't increased societal value within our field yet. I think marginally it has in some domains, like supporting students with learning difficulties, perhaps providing access to knowledge for certain communities that didn't have access before. But these are small case examples. It's definitely been more negative and disruptive than it has been positive. But we wanted to try and take a pragmatic approach where we're like, well, this exists. How do we work with it? How do we live when this does exist? And try to think of some utility and us guide that utility as well. So I would agree. I think the tool itself hasn't necessarily come up with much societal value for us, but that doesn't mean we can't figure out how we might use it to increase societal value. So it could be, like if you're looking at research projects, you could be looking, okay, maybe you're trained in a particular tradition that doesn't necessarily have a clear connection to pedagogy or policy or other things. It could be, getting suggestions from these tools of ways that you can increase the implications of your studies for practice. Yeah, it could be things like that. It could be trying to make the community that can engage with your research wider, things like that through these tools, right? So those are things that could be potential. But again, they need to be explored further. People need to kind of try these tools out, use them in different ways, and see if it does do those things for them. And then they need to write about it. They need to write about how they're using them in these ways so we can get more and more case examples. So if someone has used it successfully to connect with a community they wouldn't have connected before, or someone has used it successfully to think of a new way of making their research relevant to a particular community, we need people to tell the community that they used AI in that way so other people can learn from it. And then we can kind of build more knowledge about how we might use these tools. Yeah. Yeah, but I agree with you. I mean, when these tools first came out, I was very annoyed of how disruptive they were and how little regard the companies had for us on the front line dealing with these things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ben, for answering all these questions and very and we have seen a very thought-provoking discussion, and this is the last Open Applied Linguistics Reading Club of the year. So I wish everyone Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And if you do research on AI, please do consider reading and recommending other people the Ben's paper on study quality in the age of AI. And yeah, thank you so much. Take care and hope to see you soon sometime next year.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed today. Thank you for facilitating this wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.